Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into Surah Al-Imran, the third chapter of the Quran. You shared Mishari Al-Fossi's recitation with
Oh,
us,
nice.
with the English transcripts as well, and you're really looking to understand the core messages within this chapter. We're excited to kind of unpack its layers of meaning with you.
It's interesting that you chose this chapter, Surah Al-Imran. It's known for its complex verses and profound themes. And right from the start, it really sets a powerful tone.
You're right, it does. It establishes its divine origin and then connects to the earlier scriptures, the Torah and Gospel. Why do you think that connection is made so explicitly?
That's a great question. It reinforces the idea of a continuous divine message. Throughout history, the Quran isn't presented as a completely new revelation, but as a confirmation and continuation of what came before.
So it's emphasizing that the core message is consistent,
Yeah,
building upon itself.
exactly. And this is further highlighted by the introduction of Mukammat. Mutashabi versus
Okay, for our listener, mukamat means clear and straightforward, while mutashabi verses are more allegorical, requiring deeper interpretation. It's like having different levels of meaning within the text.
Precisely. And the chapter doesn't just present these categories. It emphasizes the importance of seeking knowledge from those firmly rooted in knowledge, particularly when encountering mutashabi
It's
versus.
almost like a warning, like don't jump to conclusions based on a surface reading. There are depths here that require guidance to understand.
That's a very insightful observation. It really stresses the importance of both faith and knowledge, working together. Blind faith without understanding can lead to misinterpretations, and intellectual analysis without spiritual grounding can miss the heart of the message.
So right from the opening verses, Surah Al-Imran is setting the stage for a journey that requires both the heart and the mind.
Absolutely. This intertwining of faith and intellect is crucial to understanding not only this chapter, but the Quran as a whole. And it's something we see reinforced through the repeated emphasis on supplication, seeking guidance and mercy from God.
It's interesting how these pleas for guidance are interwoven with warnings against worldly distractions. It's like saying, yes, seek knowledge, but don't let the pursuit of worldly things blind you to what truly matters.
You've hit upon a crucial tension that the chapter explores, the balance between our worldly existence and our spiritual aspirations. It reminds us that while wealth and desires have their place, they should never overshadow the pursuit of eternal rewards.
It's a reminder to check our priorities, to remember that the pursuit of material things can become a distraction from what's truly lasting and meaningful.
And this leads us to the theme of the Day of Judgment, which permeates the chapter. Surah Al-Imran paints a vivid picture of accountability, where our deeds in this life will have consequences in the next.
It's a sobering reminder that our choices matter, that we're not just drifting through life, but actively shaping our eternal destiny through our actions.
Exactly. This awareness of accountability should guide our every step. And it's here that the stories of the prophets become particularly relevant.
Right. The chapter is full of these narratives. We see Adam, Noah, Abraham, and the family of Imran, Mary, Jesus, and Zechariah.
Each story offers profound lessons about faith, obedience, and the consequences of choices. Let's take, for example, the story of Mary.
Okay, so for our listener who might not be familiar with the story, it's a powerful narrative about a woman chosen for a divine purpose. She's raised in the temple and then, well, I don't want to spoil it.
You're right. It's best to let the chapter unfold the story itself. But what's striking about Mary's story and the stories of other prophets in this chapter is how they highlight the interplay between human agency and divine will.
It's like saying that while we have free will, our lives are also part of a larger cosmic plan.
Precisely. And these narratives demonstrate how submission to divine will, even in the face of hardship or uncertainty, can lead to profound blessings.
Her story and the others seem to be saying, trust in God's plan even when you don't understand it.
Yes, and that trust is often tested, isn't it? The chapter portrays the challenges these prophets faced, the rejection and persecution they endured, and yet they remained steadfast in their faith, serving as powerful examples for us all.
Their stories seem to be saying that faith isn't about having all the answers, but about trusting in God, even when surrounded by doubts and difficulties.
And that unwavering trust is often what leads to incredible miracles and blessings. Take, for example, the story of Zechariah.
Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist. His story is about persistent prayer. Even when facing what seems impossible, it speaks to the power of faith and unwavering belief.
Yes, it's a reminder that God hears our pleas, even when we doubt or question his timing. And then we have the figure of Jesus, who holds a unique position in Islam.
He's considered a prophet and a messenger, but not divine in the way Christianity teaches. The Quran describes his miracles and teachings as signs of God's power.
Exactly. It's fascinating how Surah Al-Imran navigates these interfaith connections, acknowledging shared figures and narratives, while also clarifying the distinct Islamic perspective.
And that brings us to a crucial theme: interfaith dialogue and tolerance. This chapter doesn't shy away from addressing the existence of different faith communities.
You're right, it specifically addresses people of the book,
Yeah.
which refers to Jews and Christians.
It's like it's acknowledging the shared heritage and emphasizing the importance of finding common ground, while also clarifying the Islamic perspective on the nature of God and prophethood.
That's a very nuanced observation. Surah Al-Imran encourages respectful dialogue, seeking understanding despite differences, and focusing on the commonalities that unite us.
It's a powerful message. In a world that often seems so divided, this chapter encourages us to build bridges rather than walls.
Indeed, and it's within this context of interfaith dialogue that the chapter stresses the universality of Islam and its core principle, worshiping one God without any partners.
So while it encourages dialogue and finding common ground, it also firmly establishes the fundamental tenet of Islam.
Exactly, it's a delicate balance of openness and clarity, and woven throughout these narratives and theological discussions is a call to action and reflection for believers.
It's like Surah Al-Imran is saying, okay, you've heard the stories, you've grasped the concepts, now what are you going to do with this knowledge? How will you apply it to your life?
That's a great way to put it. The chapter repeatedly urges believers to persevere in their faith, act justly, spread goodness, and resist temptations.
It's like a blueprint for a righteous life.
And this blueprint isn't just about individual actions. It also touches upon the importance of community and standing together despite differences.
Okay, let's dive into that in part 2 of our deep dive. It sounds like there's so much more to uncover within this fascinating chapter.
You're absolutely right. Surah Al-Imran doesn't just offer spiritual guidance. It provides a framework for building a strong and cohesive community.
Okay, so let's unpack this idea of community. Where do we see it emerging in the chapter?
Well, it's woven throughout the text. Remember how the chapter emphasizes seeking knowledge from those who are firmly rooted in understanding? That right there highlights the importance of learning from each other, relying on the collective wisdom of the community.
It's like saying that faith isn't meant to be a solitary pursuit. We're meant to learn and grow together, supporting each other on the path.
Precisely. And this interconnectedness is further emphasized through the verses that urge believers to support and cooperate with one another, even when disagreements arise.
But how does the chapter address those inevitable disagreements that crop up in any community?
It specifically condemns those who create discord and sow division among believers. It reminds us that unity is essential for strength and resilience, especially in the face of challenges.
It's interesting because it seems to be acknowledging that differences of opinion will exist, but that those differences shouldn't be allowed to fracture the community.
That's a great point. It's about recognizing the importance of constructive dialogue, seeking common ground, and prioritizing the well-being of the community as a whole.
So it's like saying, argue your point, disagree respectfully, but never lose sight of the bigger picture. We're in this together.
Exactly. And this sense of togetherness extends beyond the immediate Muslim community. Surah Al-Imran also speaks of the importance of interacting with people of other faiths, particularly those referred to as people of the book.
You mentioned this earlier. The chapter encourages respectful dialogue with Jews and Christians, but it also seems to acknowledge that there will be areas of disagreement, right?
Yes, it acknowledges those differences,
Yeah.
but encourages focusing on the commonalities and engaging in respectful dialogue. It emphasizes conveying the message of Islam with wisdom and kindness, avoiding hostile arguments.
I'm struck by how relevant this message feels today. In a world often characterized by polarization and conflict, this emphasis on seeking understanding and building bridges across religious divides feels incredibly timely.
I agree with you. It's a reminder that building a just and compassionate world requires open hearts and open minds, a willingness to engage with those who are different from us.
But let's be honest, building bridges and maintaining unity isn't always easy. Life throws challenges at us, both individually and collectively.
That's where the theme of patience comes in. Surah Al-Imran repeatedly emphasizes the importance of enduring hardship, remaining steadfast in the face of challenges, and not losing hope in God's mercy.
There are verses that specifically address those who face persecution for their faith. urging them to remain patient and trust in God's ultimate justice.
Exactly. And this message of patience isn't just for those facing external trials. It also applies to the internal struggles we all face, dealing with anger, jealousy, and those moments when our own desires clash with what we know is right.
So it's like building a muscle of resilience, both for weathering the storms of life and for staying true to our values even when it's difficult.
Yes, and that inner strength is nurtured through a constant connection with God. The chapter encourages us to turn to Him in prayer, seeking His guidance and protection. It's a reminder that we're not alone in our struggles.
There's something incredibly comforting in that isn't there, knowing that even in our darkest moments, there's a higher power who hears our pleas and offers support.
Absolutely. And this reliance on God is intricately linked to the concept of Islam itself. The chapter emphasizes that true submission to God encompasses both belief and action, inner conviction and outward manifestation.
So it's like saying that faith without action is incomplete, and actions without sincere belief are hollow.
Precisely. It's about aligning our inner world with our outward actions, striving for a life that reflects the values of Islam.
This brings to mind the story of Joseph, a prophet who faced incredible hardships, betrayal, and temptation, yet never lost his faith or compromised his values.
That's a fantastic example. His story highlights the importance of remaining true to one's principles, even when surrounded by darkness and adversity.
His story, and so many others in this chapter, seem to be saying hold on to your faith, trust in God's plan, and ultimately justice will prevail.
That's a beautiful way to summarize it. And this message of perseverance is woven throughout Surah Al-Imran. It encourages us to not only weather the storms of life, but to actively strive for righteousness, to make a positive impact on the world.
Okay, so let's talk about that. The idea of striving for a just and compassionate world. Where does that fit into the chapter's message?
You've touched upon a crucial aspect of the chapter. Surah Al-Imran doesn't shy away from addressing the issues of justice and social responsibility, in fact.
Yeah.
It explicitly condemns oppression, exploitation, and any form of injustice.
So it's not just about personal piety, it's about actively working towards a more equitable world.
Exactly. It's about translating our faith into action, using our resources and influence to create a society that reflects the values of Islam. The chapter specifically mentions the rights of the poor and marginalized, advocating for their needs to be met and for their voices to be heard.
I'm thinking about the stories of the prophets. Didn't many of them challenge the power structures of their time? Speaking truth to authority and advocating for those who are oppressed.
Absolutely. Their lives serve as powerful examples of how faith can inspire social change. They didn't just passively accept the injustices around them, they actively challenged those injustices, even when it meant facing persecution or risking their own safety.
It's like the chapter is saying, true faith isn't just about rituals and beliefs. It's about taking action to create a world that reflects God's justice and mercy.
That's a powerful insight. And this call to action extends beyond just human interactions. Surah Al-Imran also emphasizes the importance of caring for the environment, treating animals with kindness, and preserving the balance of nature.
You're right. It's a reminder that our responsibility extends to all of creation, that we're stewards of this earth and entrusted with its care.
Exactly. This holistic view of justice and compassion is what makes Surah Al-Imran so relevant today. It challenges us to consider our impact on the world around us, to use our resources wisely, and to advocate for those who are voiceless.
It's a reminder that our actions have ripple effects, and that even seemingly small acts of kindness and justice can contribute to a larger movement towards a better world.
And speaking of actions, there's another key concept woven throughout this chapter that I find fascinating, the importance of intention.
Oh yes. Surah Al-Imran repeatedly stresses that our actions are judged by our intentions. It's not enough to just go through the motions. Our hearts need to be in the right place.
Precisely. It reminds us that sincerity is crucial. Remember those verses about striving in the cause of God? It's about aligning our actions with our beliefs, ensuring that our efforts are driven by a sincere desire to please Him, not for personal gain or recognition.
That makes me think about the verses on charity. It's not just about giving money. It's about the spirit in which it's given.
Yes, the chapter makes it clear that a small act of charity given with a pure heart is more valuable in the eyes of God than a large donation given out of pride or a desire to impress others.
It's like a constant reminder to check our motives, to make sure our actions are aligned with our values. And it reminds me of another important theme: accountability.
You've hit on a crucial point. Surah Al-Imran doesn't shy away from the reality of accountability. It paints a vivid picture of the day of judgment, when our actions will be weighed and will be judged accordingly.
Those descriptions can be quite intense. I remember feeling a sense of awe and honestly a bit of fear when I first read them.
That's understandable. They're meant to evoke a sense of reverence and seriousness, to remind us that our choices have eternal consequences.
It's definitely a motivator to strive for righteousness, knowing that we'll ultimately be held accountable for our actions.
Absolutely. And this awareness of accountability should guide every aspect of our lives, from our personal conduct to our interactions with others, from the way we use our resources to the words we speak.
Speaking of words, the chapter doesn't just focus on physical actions. It also cautions against gossip, backbiting,
Right.
and spreading falsehood.
That's right. It emphasizes the power of our words, reminding us that they can be used to build up or tear down, to spread truth or falsehood.
It's like a call to use our voices responsibly, to promote understanding and kindness, rather than division and negativity.
Exactly. And this brings us back to the core message. That resonates throughout Surah Al-Imran, the importance of submitting to the one God, Allah.
It feels like all the themes we've discussed, from faith and knowledge to action, accountability, and compassion, all stem from this central principle of recognizing and submitting to the one God.
You've captured the essence of it. It's this recognition of God's sovereignty, His absolute power and mercy, that provides the foundation for a truly meaningful and fulfilling life.
So Surat al-Imran isn't just a collection of verses and stories. It's a roadmap for navigating the complexities of life, for building a just and compassionate world, and for finding peace and purpose in our submission to God.
And it's a chapter that speaks to us on so many levels, challenging us intellectually, inspiring us spiritually, and motivating us to translate our faith into action.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm struck by a verse that seems to encapsulate the heart of the chapter's message. It says, "Say, O Allah, owner of sovereignty, you give sovereignty to whom you will, and you take sovereignty away from whom you will. You honor whom you will, and you humble whom you will. In your hand is all good. Indeed, you are over all things competent."
That's a powerful verse to end on. It highlights God's ultimate power and control over all things, reminding us that true peace and fulfillment can only be found in surrendering to His will.
It's a humbling reminder that we're not in control, that we're part of something much larger than ourselves, and that ultimately our lives are in God's hands.
And within that surrender, there's a profound sense of peace and liberation.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Surah Al-Imran. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
It's been a pleasure exploring this profound chapter with you.
And to our listener, may your journey of exploring the Quran continue to bring you knowledge, wisdom, and a deeper connection with the divine.